Welcome to another deep dive, and today we're going to be taking a look at Allan Kardec. Specifically, we're going to be cracking open what is Spiritism and looking at Chapter 3. And I think it's safe to say that we're going to get some pretty fascinating insights into, well, the nature of the soul, and maybe even get a glimpse at the existence of the soul before and after life. And who knows, maybe even a glimpse into the diverse range of worlds that exist beyond our own.
It's really interesting. Kardec, he takes a different approach than many, I think. He doesn't really just speculate about things, but he uses observations from, well, spiritual phenomena as the basis for his arguments. So it kind of adds this layer of, I guess you could say, evidence that you don't always see with a lot of these types of topics.
So it's more than just, like, theory, then.
Right.
He's building, like, actual I guess you could say tangible experiences into this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's start with how Kardec defines the soul. What exactly is it? And what about this idea of the perispirit? I know he describes it as this fluidic entity that interpenetrates our physical body.
Yeah. I mean, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
It's like imagine two entities occupying the same space, almost like a ghost passing through a wall. But instead, you have the soul merging with the physical body. And so this challenges, of course, this idea that the soul is just limited to a specific location, like in the heart or the brain, you know? Kardec is saying, no, it's actually, it's interwoven.
It's more like integrated than with us.
Yeah.
That makes the concept of leaving your body, like those out-of-body experiences, a little more, I don't know, concrete, I guess.
For sure.
If the soul isn't fixed to one spot, it makes sense that it could detach and travel.
Right. And speaking of detachment, Kardec uses this very powerful image to describe death. It's like a split between the soul and the body. And I mean, that really drives home the finality of that separation, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you think.
Yeah.
Now, let's get to the heart of what Kardec is proposing here. I mean, he tackles this age-old question. Does the soul exist before our physical body is even born?
Right. And Kardec's answer to that is a resounding yes. He argues that the pre-existence of the soul actually solves many mysteries that traditional views just can't explain.
Wait, hold on. What kind of mysteries? What are we talking about?
Well, think about the concept of innate talents. Where did those come from? Or those deep-seated fears or phobias we have that come seemingly from nowhere?
Right.
Kardec would say that these are echoes of experiences that the soul had before this life.
So you're saying, I'm not just randomly good at playing the piano.
Maybe, maybe not.
It's a skill maybe carried over from a past life.
Potentially, yeah. And this leads us to this concept of soul evolution that Kardec really dives into. He suggests that souls they're not all created equal in their advancement, but rather they progress through a series of lives, each one building upon the last.
So it's like we're all in school, but cosmic school. And each lifetime is a new grade level.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
But, I mean, how does that explain this vast range of human experiences that we see? Some people seem to be born into, incredibly difficult circumstances. And others, they have it seemingly easy. How does that work?
That's where Kardec's description of the hierarchy of worlds comes in. He describes a whole spectrum of worlds, each existing at a different level of moral and intellectual development.
Okay, so he's not just talking about different planets then.
No, not in the way that we typically think of it. It's
Right.
more of a spiritual ranking. Yeah, some worlds, he explains, are more brutal and materialistic than our own, where, the inhabitants are driven by these very base desires and conflict.
And on the other end, what's at the other end of the spectrum?
Well, you find these worlds that are so advanced that suffering is almost unknown. And, the inhabitants have bodies that are almost ethereal, focused on these higher pursuits of knowledge and compassion.
So where does Earth fit into all of this? Are we top of the class, or are we struggling to keep up?
Kardec places Earth somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
We're neither the most advanced nor the most primitive.
Right, in between.
So we're somewhere in between, which is, honestly, it's quite humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, it puts things into perspective. But if we're in the middle, that means there's a lot of room for growth, right?
Yeah.
Both individually and as a species.
Precisely. And according to Kardec, the soul's journey through these multiple lives, that's the driving force behind that growth.
Okay.
Each lifetime offers us this chance to learn, to evolve, and to move closer to a state of, greater understanding and harmony.
So we're not just like accumulating knowledge and experiences.
Hmm.
We're actually becoming like better, more compassionate
Yes.
beings, like with each life.
Yeah, that's the idea. And this understanding really does have like profound implications for how we approach our lives right now. I mean, just knowing that we've lived before and will live again, it changes how we view things,
Yeah.
our relationships, our actions in the world, even our understanding of death itself.
It makes you think about, like, if this isn't the first draft of our lives, then what kind of story do we want to write going forward?
Exactly. And that brings us to a pretty big question, which is if our soul is progressing through these multiple lives, what happens after death? Like where does the soul go? What experiences await it on the next stage of this journey?
That is the question, isn't it? And it's one we're going to be tackling in the next part of our deep dive. So stick with us as we explore Kardec's insights on the afterlife and what this grand journey of the soul might ultimately mean for all of us.
So we left off with, well, a pretty big question, I guess. What happens to the soul after death? It's a topic that's kind of, I guess, fascinated and frightened humanity for as long as we've been around.
And you know what I find really interesting is that Kardec's view of the afterlife, well, it doesn't exactly fit into these, neat boxes of heaven and hell that we so often hear about. He doesn't even really talk about eternal reward or punishment.
Really?
Yeah. Instead, he focuses on this idea of continued evolution, even, after we shed our physical bodies.
So it's less about like judgment and more about like ongoing development. What is that? I mean, what does that even look like according to Kardec? Are we just, I don't know, floating around in some like ethereal waiting room?
Not quite. Think of it more as transitioning to a different level of education.
We're still, students just in a different classroom. The soul, having gathered all these experiences from its time on Earth, it enters this, what he calls the spirit world,
Okay.
where it continues to, learn and progress.
But what does learning even look like in the spirit world? What do souls, like, I don't know, what do they actually do there?
Well, Kardec kind of suggests that the spirit world is just as, diverse and dynamic as the physical world.
Okay.
He describes souls engaging in activities, interacting with other spirits, and kind of, reflecting on their past lives.
So it's like a giant debriefing section
Yeah.
after, a particularly intense project.
Yeah.
Where you get to analyze what went well, what could have been done better, and how to approach things differently next time.
I like that analogy. It's a time for reflection, processing all the lessons that were learned, and, preparing for the next stage of the journey.
And what about, those who, let's say, didn't exactly ace the test in their earthly life? Are they doomed to some kind of spiritual detention?
Kardec, he addresses this as well.
Yeah.
He proposes that souls who have, acted in harmful or, I guess, unevolved ways, well, they might experience a period of suffering in the spirit world.
So there are consequences for our actions even after death.
Yes, but he frames it, I guess, less as punishment from a higher power and more as the natural, I guess, consequences of our choices.
Yeah. Huh.
If we've created suffering in the physical world, we might experience a reflection of that suffering in the spirit world. It's a way to, I guess, learn and grow from those actions, wouldn't you say?
It's like facing the ripple effects of our actions, but in a more, I don't know, a more direct and maybe even more intense way. It sounds kind of like, the idea of karma, but applied to like the spiritual realm.
Yeah, you can definitely see it that way. But I think it's important to remember that Kardec, he emphasizes that the suffering, it's not eternal. It's a process of purification and learning, ultimately leading towards, greater understanding and spiritual evolution.
So there's still hope, even for those who, strayed from a more compassionate path.
Absolutely. Kardec's message is ultimately one of hope and love.
Okay.
He stresses that every soul, regardless of its past actions, has the potential for redemption and progress.
So it's a very different perspective,
Yeah.
From what many people might imagine when they think about the afterlife.
Yeah.
It's certainly more nuanced than like, the fire and brimstone imagery that we so often encounter.
Exactly. And it encourages us to think about, the choices we make in this life, not out of fear of punishment, but out of a desire for growth and a deeper understanding.
This kind of brings us back to the beginning of our deep dive. We talked about the soul's pre-existence, its journey through multiple lives, and now its continued evolution in the spirit world. So what does it all mean? Like, what's the key takeaway for us here in the present?
Well, the essential point, I think, is that life It's not a one-time event. It's this ongoing journey of learning and growth that extends, far beyond our physical existence.
And this journey isn't just about like racking up experiences and knowledge, right?
Right.
It's about something deeper. It's about,
Yeah.
becoming more compassionate and evolved beings.
Exactly. And this understanding has like profound implications for how we approach our lives right now. Knowing that we've lived before and will live again, it reframes our perspective on everything from relationships to our actions in the world.
It's a powerful concept, but it does kind of raise some questions. For example, if we've had past lives, why don't we remember them? Why is there this like veil of forgetting?
That's a question that has intrigued people for centuries.
Yeah.
And it's one that Kardec tackles directly.
I have a feeling he has some interesting insights on that.
He does, and those insights are what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into that mystery of forgotten memories, the purpose behind this veil, and the possibilities of uncovering, even just glimpses into our past.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We're exploring Allan Kardec's Spiritism. And if you will recall, we've talked about the soul existing before birth, its journey through multiple lives, even what might be waiting for us in the spirit world.
And last time, we left off with a question that comes up a lot with past lives, If we've lived before, why don't we remember? I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to have all that knowledge and experience from past lives? Like a cheat sheet for life, right?
You think it would be super helpful to learn from your past mistakes. But Kardec, he says there's a reason we don't remember.
Yeah, he thinks being flooded with memories from past lives would be way too much. Like, imagine trying to live your life now, work, relationships, all that, while also reliving everything from countless past lives, the good and the bad.
It'd be chaos.
Total chaos, right. You wouldn't be able to focus, learn new things, move forward. It'd be like trying to write a new chapter while you're still editing the old one.
Makes sense. So this veil of forgetting, as he calls it, it lets us be present in this life, experience it fresh, and learn new lessons without all that baggage.
Right, it's like a cosmic reset. But does that mean those memories are totally gone? Like, is there any way to access them, even a little bit?
Well, Kardec didn't think we're totally cut off.
Ah.
He said there are ways to kind of peek through the veil, though it's not easy. Things like dreams, strong gut feelings, certain spiritual experiences, those could be glimpses into past lives.
So, like, that dream I keep having about being a knight, could that be a past life?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee that every dream or feeling is a past life, of course. But sometimes, Kardec says, they can be echoes from your soul's history, bubbling up.
Interesting. And he also talks about mediums, right? That communicate with spirits, and that could reveal things about past lives, too.
Yeah, mediums were important in his work. He saw it as a way to get knowledge, confirmation from the spirit world about our past lives and what we're still learning.
Like a direct line to the Akashic records or something? But even without mediums, are there clues in our lives now that hint at past lives?
Kardec thought so. Strong likes and dislikes, fears that come out of nowhere, talents we have. He said those could be leftovers from past lives.
So my fear of spiders, maybe it's because I got trapped in a web in a past life. Or my love for painting means I was an artist before.
Could be. It's not an exact science, but Kardec wanted us to think about how those past lives might be shaping us in ways we don't even realize. Like we've got hidden chapters in our soul's story.
Some people might want to read those chapters, others might not. But the point is, Kardec's ideas, they're big. We're not just bodies and personalities. We're eternal souls on a journey of growth.
And knowing that changes everything, how we see life, death, what we're doing here in the universe.
Makes you think about your actions differently, We're part of something huge, bigger than this one life. It makes you wonder, if we've lived before and will live again, what kind of world do we want to make?
Both for ourselves and for all the souls who'll come after us. What do we want to leave behind?
That's something to think about, right? We need to look past today and see how our actions will echo through lifetimes.
This has been our deep dive into Allan Kardec and his ideas.
It's a lot to think about, but we hope it's just the start of your own exploration.
If you're curious, go check out Kardec's work. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, because figuring out the soul, its journey, well, that's a journey we all take. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep seeking.